So everyone's in these cars and they're driving down this interstate that's never ending. And they're mashing the gas, whether that be Airbnb investing, stock market, index funds, business creation. Like they've got their vehicle and they're just going until they redline. And that red line looks like divorce, anxiety, freaking depression, sickness, cancer. And people never stop. And that's where burnout occurs because we don't know what the actual end destination is. So I always tell people start with the end destination in mind before we get into the vehicle to start driving. But after a month of laying on the beach, you're just hungover and sunburnt. All right, I've done it. I've done the thing that you're trying to do. The reality of the situation is you need something to work on and work towards. That's where happiness and purpose and fulfillment come from.
Welcome, millionaires and future millionaires. You're listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast, a show where you'll hear the stories and interviews of everyday millionaires. We'll unveil their decisions, their strategies, and their portfolio allocation. Now to your host, Jace Mattinson.
Welcome back to another episode of the Millionaires Unveiled podcast. This is episode number 301. Stace, it's your birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Happy birthday to you today. And we celebrate the 4th of July tomorrow. Happy birthday, America. It's always a double whammy in our household, but it's a lot of fun, especially in Texas, because the fireworks are always on the 3rd of July for the most part, at least the biggest ones.
Yes. Growing up, I always went to Kaboom Town in Addison in the Dallas area on my birthday. So I've grown up just loving fireworks because everyone likes to party on my birthday.
Good times. Outside of that, I guess we're in the middle of summer. Anything else going on in your world that's fun and interesting and exciting?
It's been a fun summer of adventure so far. Trying to log some more memories into the memory dividends bank account for our family. Spending a lot of time at the pool and also planning some fun hikes and adventures.
Yeah, it's heating up, that's for sure. So today we have a buddy of mine, actually. His name's Brian. He's a net worth of just over $1 million. He's 28 years old, so he's pretty young. One of our youngest millionaires that we've had on the podcast. He's got just over $400,000 in home equity, or I should say real estate equity. Some of that's in a primary residence that he has turned into a rental, and then another one that has been a rental for a while. He recently moved to Austin, Texas, as we get into and discuss the proximity of your network. A little bit in cash, and then about $87,000 in retirement accounts, $26,000 in some crypto, and the rest is in his small business. So great episode with him. He used to be in sales and worked up the corporate ladder for a while and has recently left that and started his own business. So we get into the discussion about taking that leap and all that comes with that. And before he did that, he traveled around the world for about a year and made several memories and went on several adventures. So going to be a great episode with him. Last week we had my parents. Y'all's downloads have nearly broken the internet in a way, much to my dad's dismay. It'll probably be the most downloaded episode ever for us. So I appreciate that. I hope everybody enjoyed that episode. If you'd like to be on the show, send us an email, millionairesunveiled@gmail.com. Also, everybody have a great 4th of July out there. Stay safe. And without any further delay, let's get into the interview with Brian.
Brian, you want to just give us a little about your background and what you're up to now?
What's up, everybody? My name is Brian Lubin. I did kind of the traditional path to wealth. I graduated college, hopped in a sales job, did the corporate America thing, and made it to the top. I was number 8 in a sales organization in a Fortune 500 out of 5,079 rep. Won the awards, filled a trophy case full of them. Got promoted, and then they told me I was going to get the VP position, finally get everything I ever wanted. Made it to the mountaintop, realized I was climbing the wrong mountain. So I took the obvious next step, quit the job, went and traveled full-time around the world in 2022. So obvious next step, right?
Holy cow, hold on here for a second. Man. So traveled around the world. Hold on. Rewind. go back for a second. Like, this is crazy. What led you to decide to go travel around the world and leave? And I mean, in most cases, this is like everybody's dream is what you're living. And then you like completely did a flip to 180. Like, what happened?
Yeah, sounds like a heck of a podcast episode, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so where do you want me to begin, man? We can take this down so many different directions.
What led you to the decision to leave the job first and then travel, or were they kind of simultaneous?
Cool. So I have a macro answer and I have a micro answer. Which one do you want first?
Let's get the micro first. We'll go to macro second.
Cool. So the micro was I looked at my boss's boss. So in corporate America, when you're getting groomed for that next position, whether that be a sales manager or a vice president or any operations position, whatever have you, you shadow the person, right? So they'll start putting you through different like circuits where you go and you'll spend a week with them. They'll kind of show you the ropes. They'll show you their job. And so I was shadowing my VP of sales. And that was going to be me if I kicked tail in the next 5 years because, I was slotted for that promotion. I was like the golden child in my job. And I looked at him and I was just like, dude, I do not want to be you. I was like, you are not with your family. You're missing your daughters grow up. You're traveling around and doing PowerPoint presentations, basically full time around the Southeast. I was like, dude, I don't want this life. And frankly, he didn't make that much more than me on paper. So I looked at that and I was like, well, this is my next 5 years if I crush it. I was like, and this is if I give it all I've got. That's not a worthy pursuit. So that's advice that I give to people that are listening to these shows because they all care about building wealth, building passive income, whatever have you. I tell them, look at your boss's boss. And if you don't want to be that person, it's time to start planning your escape. Always. So that's the micro. The macro was I created what's called a vivid vision. And I was sitting in my cubicle and I was looking out at what I wanted in my life. It was shortly after making that realization of my boss's boss. I was like, okay, well, if I could do anything in the world, if I had like $100 million in my bank account, what would I do? And so I started writing it out. And that's one of the books that I always recommend people, Vivid Vision by Cameron Herold. I had him on my podcast and I read his book. And it basically says write a 3-year vision like in present tense. So you're 3 years in the future. You have everything you ever wanted. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What's a day look like? And I wrote it out and I was like, I wake up in the morning and I go out on my balcony and I could see the Greek sunrise in the distance over Mykonos. I just pulled it out of nowhere. And I said, in the morning, I'm free to do whatever I want. In the afternoon, I have calls for my business that did not yet exist. And this is what I do full time. I can make money traveling, doing what I want, when I want, with who I want. I'm financially free. All this good stuff. And this is sitting in the cubicle of my corporate job. And 1.5 years after that, I planned to do it in 5 years. I pulled it off in 1.5. So I did that thing.
Wow. It's amazing what can happen when you just put your mind to something, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, most people are in this car, right? And they're driving down the road. And we talk about this on your show all the time, all these different paths to wealth, these everyday millionaires. So we all know how to save money, frugality, living beneath your means, making more income. We get that. The problem is everybody focuses so much on the vehicle, but not the destination. So everyone's in these cars and they're driving down this interstate that's never ending. And they're mashing the gas, mashing the gas, mashing the gas, whether that be Airbnb investing, stock market, index funds, business creation. Like they've got their vehicle and they're just going until they redline. And that red line looks like divorce, anxiety, freaking depression, sickness, cancer, and people never stop. And that's where burnout occurs because we don't know what the actual end destination is. So I always tell people start with the end destination in mind before we get into the vehicle to start driving. So that's served me very well.
Yeah, and I want to get a little bit more into this mindset stuff. But what's your net worth today?
Right. Well, yeah, we were just talking off camera. I've lost, ironically, about 200, probably 50,000. Right now, I'm right at the 1.03. So 1,037,000. So
freaking $1 million hauler right now, baby. I love it.
Yeah. It was a lot more fun when it was a little bit over. But it was ironic because this was my ultimate goal in life was to make it to this point. Yeah. And I made it. And I was like, where's the confetti?
Right. How is this broken up?
So I've got it all written out because we just did the PFS. So I've got $408,000 in home equity. I've got 2 properties, one that's still a primary and then another that's a rental. I do co-living. We can get into that. I got $113,000 in cash, I've got 113,000 in equities and crypto, and that's broken down into 87,000 in equities, which is just index funds, boring stuff. 26,000 in crypto. I've got a podcast business which printed out $112,000 last year through affiliate, not CPM. So there's two different types of revenue for podcasts: CPM, CPA, which we can get into. Purely affiliates. I made 112 this year. I'm on 24,000 for affiliates for 2023. So I'm valuing that at just a 1x multiple of just 100,000. And then I've got a mastermind group that's 212,000 ARR right now. And I valued that at 2x. So that's 296,000.
Good stuff. So the properties, you got one primary and then one co-living or one rental, or how do you categorize that?
Well, technically, I just moved out. So it's still my primary on paper, but I just moved to Austin, Texas to an apartment, to like my dream apartment. I'm having the rental properties pay the rent here. So both my houses in Atlanta, Georgia are fully rented out, co-living. So rent by the room.
Gotcha. Okay. So moved away, had a house that you owned, but now you're renting.
Ironically, right?
Crazy, right? I mean, this has happened, I don't know, a handful of times on this show, but walk me through the mindset of getting to that point and moving away from Atlanta to Austin.
This is actually a great point, and I'm glad you asked that, because this is something I podcast every day, dang near probably 10 hours a week, and nobody's asked me this question, and I'm really excited to get into this. So thank you for that. So I started my financial freedom journey by living in an apartment and saying, wow, this is terrible. I'm throwing money away, right? We all go through this process, especially as real estate investors. So I'm throwing money away. I'm going to, start saving money to buy my first property. I'm going to move a roommate in. Buy your first property. I did what's called the house hack method. So I moved into one part of the house, put 3% down, conventional financing, rented the other rooms out. Pretty normal, pretty boring, not very sexy. Repeated the process again, put 5% down, did the house hack thing again, rented the other rooms out. So as I did this, I was living about 40 minutes north of Atlanta, Georgia. So I was out in the suburbs a bit. And I had a girlfriend at the time that was always wanting to go do things in the city and be in the city. And it would be a 40-minute drive down into Atlanta and then a 40-minute drive back up home. And so I wasn't really doing too much in the city or hanging out with people that were living in the middle of Atlanta. So I traveled around the world, which we can get into a little bit more in detail in a bit. I was 3 months in Europe, 3 months in Brazil, South America, and then I spent a little bit of time in Singapore. And I learned the power of environment, because when I'm in these beautiful places, I'm meeting awesome people that are doing massive things that I wouldn't meet 40 minutes north in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia. And so when I traveled around, I got that perspective. When I came home, I was just like living in the basement of my house hack once again. And I was asking the question, what does the 8-figure version of Brian look like? Like, what does that guy do? Where does that guy live? What's his office look like? Is his podcast studio just like this desk in this basement in a house hack 40 minutes north of Atlanta? And the answer was no. And through the power of mentorship and a bunch of people that I know, like, and trust that were ahead of me that had made it to the 8-figure mark, they said, dude, you need to change your environment. Like, you just traveled around. You saw how that impacted your business. It's time to go. So I never thought that I would rent again. But I ended up moving to Austin, Texas on a whim, and where a lot of my mentors actually live. And so now I'm very close in proximity to them. We're always hanging out. It's already opened massive doors for me. So the importance of environment is insane. I actually have switched my perspective on this and would recommend, if possible, I think it's a preferable outcome for you to have a crappy house or a crappy apartment in a fantastic area where people are moving and shaking, as opposed to a mansion or a really nice house way out in the outskirts where nobody's doing anything. So I'm right in downtown Austin, right on the river, right on Lady Bird Lake. And it's opened so many doors for me, man. So I can't believe I'm renting again either, but quite frankly, it's pretty nice.
It's crazy you bring up the proximity to these things, because, I grew up personally in Eastern Washington and grew up in a predominantly small business / very heavy medical community, especially with my parents being in that field. That's really all I was around. But my dad told me, and I'll never forget this, he said, if you want to learn business, go to Texas, because I was born in Houston and my parents lived there for a little bit. And my dad said everybody that he met in Texas just knew business really well. Mm-hmm. And I took that advice probably not a lot of other advice that my dad gave me that I should have, but that was one that I did, and it always stuck with me, and I came back, and I'll never regret it. And of course, now I'm here in Austin, and the proximity to a lot of people that I know, like, and trust, and I have really learned to grow and I've learned a lot from. So it's interesting you bring that up. Real quick, I want to mention something because we usually don't have people as young as you on the podcast too, but just so our listeners know, how old is Brian?
52. No, 28.
28. So really in did you graduate at 22?
When I graduated college?
Yeah.
Graduated college in 2017.
So yeah, you're about 22.
Yeah, 22 years old.
So call it, even with corporate job, did you get to millionaire status in 5-6 years probably?
Yeah, just about.
Wow.
But in the first 2 or 3 of that, I'd say the first 2 of that was making $250,000 a year and spending every single dollar.
Really?
So, yeah, I had a moment where I learned what net worth was. And even people that are, making money and good at making money, they don't necessarily know about assets and net worth and wealth building. It's not a skill. It's a whole separate skill than what's taught in school, and especially in corporate America. They don't talk about it much. All they talk about is how to get the next promotion, how to politic, all that different stuff. And we can get into corporate America and all that in a bit too. But I learned what net worth was because I started switching my sales podcast for real estate podcast. And I heard this guy talking. He was talking about net worth and passive income, financial freedom. And I was like, whoa. I'm worth nothing, man. I'm worthless. And I was making a lot of money. 23, 24 years old. I was wheeling and dealing. I was just spending it all. And I was really good at spending money. And so that was a cool moment. Oh, dude, I was traveling all across U.S. I'd fly to Miami for a weekend, go down to the clubs, come back up, just high-rise apartment. Dude, I was spending. I was good at spending money. But I immediately stopped that, started accumulating assets, accumulating wealth, and then that's where the entire journey began.
Did you ever think, like, what happens if I lost my job or anything like that when you were spending that much?
No, because I was young. I was younger. And also, quite frankly, I believe that when you have a very rare and valuable skill, like an income-producing skill, you're not as concerned about that stuff. Because for context, like if you have the ability to code and you're a really good coder right now, that's a very rare and valuable skill in this marketplace. And so is sales. So in my mind, I was like, worst case scenario, which I never expected that job would end at all. Because like I said, I was the golden child, kind of soaring through their corporate skies over there. But worst case scenario, if I were to get fired or let go, which would have required me basically punching like my HR director to do that, I would have just found another sales job and made 6 figures. Because it's like once you get to that skill set, it's like you're never not going to make 6 figures ever again. And so that's why I always harp, like the first investment anybody should make if you're listening to this and you're maybe young, maybe you're in college, maybe you're just about to graduate, I'd say the first thing to invest in is you, like building your skill sets, building your income producing ability. That's the first thing I'd invest in.
During your sales training and sales career, were you spending a lot of time developing that craft, or did you have a natural gift for it?
Both. I had a natural proclivity for it with my personality and with extroversion, but I truly put my 10,000 hours in. So everyone talks about, 10-year overnight success, and there's different like degrees of competency. You have like unconsciously incompetent, which is you don't know how bad you are. And then you're consciously incompetent, where you're like, okay, I suck. And then it goes to conscious competence, and then unconscious competence. So I put my 10,000 hours in, man. I made the sales calls. I did the role plays every day. I had mentors in my corporate job. I was listening to sales podcasts every single day for hours and hours and hours, reading all the books, doing all the training. And that's what made me get to the top. Like I just really did that Rocky cutscene where he's running through and just punching the freaking meat in the basement. Like, I think it's unavoidable. You need that Rocky cutscene.
Yeah, for sure. So real quick, you've got a little bit in the index funds. How did that get there, and why did you decide to do that when it seems like, you've had some success in real estate?
So yeah, that was the first move that I made, was just investing in index funds, because when you're learning about freedom and finance and all of that good stuff, then you just start with index funds, kind of like the whole Boglehead method, where I was just like, okay, I will save money and invest in index funds. And that was the traditional path that I was kind of following. So that it just grew over time, and I have that. I'm probably about to deplete it right now. And it used to be a lot more, obviously, but right now I'm just letting it sit and simmer just for the sole fact of diversification. Same thing with my cash. The only thing I would do with it if I were to sell it would just be to hold it in cash, because I'm not currently buying real estate until next year. So I'm just waiting. So while that's kind of sitting and accumulating, if anything, I'd maybe buy securities or like treasuries, like 6-month, 12-month treasuries. But right now, all of my focus, all my mental space is on my business. That's all I care about.
Why aren't you buying real estate till next year? Is it just to focus on the business?
Yeah, it's my one thing. So I've become buddies with Jay Papasan, who's one of the co-authors of The One Thing. That's another awesome book by Jay and Gary Keller. And people are good at a lot of things for the most part. I want to be really great at one thing. So I got advice from a mentor that said, if you have 5 businesses and they're all doing like $100,000 in revenue annually, then wouldn't it be better to just have one business that's doing 500? I was like, and he's like, wouldn't that make your life more fun and manageable and easy? And couldn't you scale that even faster? I was like, absolutely. So I finally found my one thing, and I'm all in on that. That is, when I wake up in the morning, I'm very crystal clear about what I'm working on that day, what my goals are, what needles I'm moving. And the irony of this is this week on Thursday, I've got to fly to freaking Atlanta, Georgia to evict a tenant and to do a final walkthrough because she just decided to stop paying. And it's a massive thorn in my side because my property manager quit as well. So that's real estate. There's no such thing as true passive income. It's degrees of passivity. So right now, my goal is to build my business up to $1 million ARR with a 70% margin. And if I can put all my energy and effort into that, then moving into next year with my podcast and the business operating as it is with my connections, I'll have the cash flow and connections to just take down massive triple net lease commercial properties and ride off into the sunset. So I'm no longer investing in single family. I'm going to do big deals with big people.
So eventually you're going to sell all these properties or sell these 2 properties?
That's been a point of contention. That's actually been a conversation that's been brought up by multiple people. Right now, I'm holding on to them just because there's nothing else I would do with the capital currently. If they continue to be a problem, then yes, I'd consider selling them. They both cash flow beautifully. So I'm cash flowing about $3,600 net between those properties monthly. And so that's super fun. But, it's a bit more of a operational drag when you're doing co-living. So it's been quiet for a while, and now CapEx is coming up and all that's coming up. So we will see. I'm not quite sure yet what I want to do with them, but I think that I'm going to let them simmer, maybe do a home equity line of credit and have that available, just do some LOCs on them. Worst case, I don't know if I want to do a cash out refinance, but the rates are so good that it'd be almost difficult for me to sell them. I have a 3.2 on the first one and I have a 2.5% interest rate on the second one.
Wow.
So it's like free money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the money you did have in retirement account, you transferred that out to buy real estate?
Oh, yeah. I don't got retirement accounts. That's my hot take.
Let's hear it.
So, and I know, hey, guys, this is my opinion. This is not financial advice. All right. Everybody's situation is different and you may not agree with me, and that's perfectly okay. There's one opinion I had when I was researching all the different options I could use with my money that's in my retirement account. I had like $50,000, $60,000 in my retirement account, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, okay, what do I want to use this for? And the original idea was I wanted to take it out to buy like a laundromat or a cash flowing business, like a car wash, laundromat, hire an operator, move them in, and then have that be another passive income source. So I was looking at that. I was looking at real estate. And as I was going through it, I was looking at the different loan vehicles that you could use out of your 401k, right? So you can invest in real estate out of your 401k or IRA. And you can also roll it into solo 401k. You can roll it into an EQRP. And so there's a bunch of different ways that you could do it. But every single way that I was seeing, it essentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from my research, I was just like, okay, so I can do this. I can buy the asset, but the cash flow from the asset has to go back to the vehicle. So I'm like, if I'm cash flowing $1,000 a month, that cash flow is returning to the retirement vehicle, not into my pocket that I can spend to buy groceries and have fun, which is the reason I'm investing in real estate. So I was just like, this is so difficult for me to have access to my own dang money. It was irritating to me. So I just paid the 10% pre-withdrawal penalty. I paid the taxes on it. I withdrew it. And I've slept just fine at night ever since.
That's pretty wild. So let's fast forward here just a little bit. In 5 to 10 years, what does your asset allocation look like?
From today?
From today.
Oh, that's a fun one. So I want my media company at 10 million ARR. So I want 10 million plus of annual recurring revenue for that one. I want an 8-figure valuation for that company. Podcast, I want to have, in 5, 10 years, that's easily $1 million a year just from the podcast, from that business alone, through advertisers and affiliates. Real estate, I'll have commercial properties with big players. I partner with operators. I want to be really good at my thing and have other people that I'm best friends with that are really good at their thing, instead of trying to be a jack of all trades, master of none. So what I'm going to do is be like the most connected capital guy. Right now, just as I'm sitting today, I could probably send an email and raise $10 million. I truly believe that I could do that, just based off of my network that I have today. 5 years from now, it's going to be through the roof. So I would say that at that point, I'll probably have a fund or be a part of a fund with multiple partners where I'm the capital raiser, kind of like Brandon Turner, Bigger Pockets style, where he kind of did his exodus and created his mobile home park fund. I'll probably do something like that. At minimum, I would say probably $20 million in equity. In probably, I would say today, triple net lease commercial buildings is what I'm looking at. And that's the most attractive one for me personally, but we will see what happens. But I don't want to focus on that. All my focus is on my media company, and then all the cash flow will go to the operators that I partner with.
How much would you typically of your net worth, or maybe you haven't thought of this, I don't know, would you keep liquid or, fairly liquid for deal flow or reinvest in your business or whatever? And
yeah, so I don't have a certain percentage right now. I'm pretty cash heavy on 113,000. That's mostly in my operating for my business, but I can also draw on that personally. I'm not quite sure. I don't have a direct answer. I would like to have a year's worth of salary for me. So about $120,000 post-tax for me to have to spend. And I'd like employee salaries completely covered for a year. So I'd like to have enough in cash reserves for my business to operate an entire year without bringing in additional revenue. And then I would like to have pretty stout cash reserves for each one of the properties, probably $10,000 plus per property. So it's just depending. It's just percentage allocation based off of whatever assets I accumulate. And we should be able to hit that pretty shortly with how the business cash flow is growing month over month. And so that's been pretty fun. But yeah, so right now I don't have a specific answer. It also completely depends on the macro economy. Right now, I think cash is king. It's best to have as much cash as possible and access to capital, access to LOCs on your business, LOCs on your real estate, because we're about to see opportunity popping up left and right, whether that be today, 6 months, 12 months, 16 months. Is this going to be like a 3-year process as we kind of go through this turbulence that we're in right now, the recession that we are in right now? We just saw SVB collapse. We saw Credit Suisse get bought up by UBS. And so it's just like, here we go. It's just the domino effect. Now, all of us are sitting on equity. All of us are sitting on cash. So none of us are necessarily scared. We're just cautious, right? So everyone's playing the game of how do I mitigate loss and have the maximum upside potential. So for me, what that looks like is having a large cash position, have recession resistant real estate, B-class properties in suburban blue-collar neighborhoods. I am probably going to put some of my money, maybe half of it, in a 6-month or 12-month U.S. Treasury at like 6%, and then let that sit to maturity and then collect that. Maybe do a bit of private money lending. I'm not too sure. Probably not, just because it'd be an extra thing for me to think about. So hopefully that answered your question. But yeah. Fairly liquid.
Yeah. How has your risk tolerance changed since you were, in college or even after college to now?
I didn't even think about risk tolerance in college. So I'm still pretty swinging for the fences, man, because There is also some generational bias that comes with that, right? So we have different biases. So for me, I didn't go through a 2008. So how my generation looks at things is a bit different than how people that are in their 40s and 50s and 60s that went through a 2008 lost everything are. So what I do is I kind of defer to them and follow their judgment. So for me, I'm swinging for the fences, especially with my baby business right now. I'm going all in. So I've got a pretty high risk tolerance, and that will change as time goes on and I enter a different season. So you have different seasons of life. You have wealth accumulation and wealth preservation. It's two different games, two different skills. So I'm full in mashing on the gas on wealth accumulation right now. So for you to do that, you need to swing for the fences. And I think that major wealth and the biggest businesses are built in downturns. I'm pretty sure that's a statistical fact. So that's what I'm working on.
Awesome. So let's shift gears a little bit. Your podcast, why did you decide to start the podcast? How did you come up with the idea, the branding, everything with that?
So I was at a mastermind event and I was golfing with a guy and he says, dude, you're very connected. He goes, the fact that me and you are golfing together and I didn't know who you were like 2 months ago is pretty wild. He's like, because I don't really hang out with anyone that I don't really know, but I feel like I've known you forever. He goes, you need to start a podcast. And I just said, okay. It's like, sure, that sounds fun. And I looked at like Tim Ferriss, I looked at Joe Rogan, and those guys had a lifestyle that I admired to where they just basically made a living off of talking and being friends with interesting people. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, and you've got like this niche fame that comes with it to where you've got like the people that listen to your pod where they would kind of fangirl if they saw you, which has happened to me, ironically, even at 50,000 downloads a month. It's insane. But you're not famous enough to where you're going to get like stopped in public. Now, Rogan may get stopped. I think Tim Ferriss would maybe get away with it from time to time. But I looked at their lives and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I started up the podcast, Action Academy podcast, in October of 2021, I believe. And I just grinded away at it. I had relationships built over 3 years of me just adding value, pouring into people, never asking anything, just shutting up, listening, and taking notes, man. I was a great mentee, and I'm still a fantastic mentee to this day, and it's something I'm very proud of. I'll just take notes and do things that people told me. That's advice that I give people. When you find the mentor that you're looking for, and they give you advice, implement the advice, document it, and send it back to them and say, hey, I did the thing. I'm not a waste of your time, right? So I did that, and then by the time it came time to do the podcast, I had so many deposits that I had made into other people that they wanted to pour back into me. So I had some really cool guests that were able to come on, like high net worth guys from the very, very beginning. And that's kind of how my show started. So ever since I began, my sweet spot's kind of been between 5 and 50 million for my show guest. I've gone up into the 9 figures, hundreds of millions a couple of times, and a couple billionaires. So that's been pretty cool. I do 5 episodes a week, and it just was my baby, man. I did it for free. I did it with no intention of it becoming a business, and it just happened to become a business. And I think that's the best way to go about this thing is starting with, your financial foundation, buy the real estate, buy the cash flow businesses, do the stock market, whatever you want, and then figure out what you're really passionate about, pursue that, just do it for free, and then see if you can build a business off of it. And so that's what I did.
Good stuff. When you left your job and you went to go travel the world, talk me through what led to that decision to go travel. Was it to kind of get this clarity on what you really wanted to do next? Or did you already have the podcast idea and you were like, hey, I'm going to go do this while I go travel because that sounds fun and I can?
So it all ironically began and stemmed from a mindset coach that I had hired. So I always recommend, like I said, invest in yourself. I invested in, the $10,000 coaches before I could really afford it. So I had a mindset coach. I was in a couple masterminds and I was talking to my mindset coach and I was like, okay, so, and this was like early to mid 2021. And I was saying, hey, I've got like $4,000 coming from real estate right now. That kind of replaces my salary, but I'm making like $250,000. I was like, through bonuses and commission, how can I replace that? I was like, it's going to take me 5-10 years through multifamily investing, which was my original idea. And he goes, well, let's figure out how to do it in 6 months instead. I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, well, let's just try it. He's like, if you were to do it, how would you do it? And so I started to rack in my brain, and it's powerful what your brain comes up with when asked and prompted difficult questions that stretch it. And I was like, dude, I can't generate passive income that fast. And he was like, well, why does it need to be passive? And like, that's what changed my life, is I realized I don't really give a crap about passive income per se. I just wanted remote income that I had fun generating while I was traveling. And so we changed our focus to, instead of how do I generate $20,000 a month of passive income, how do I generate $20,000 a month in remote scalable income that I enjoy, working for people and with people I know, like, and trust. So we created that goal and we started working towards it and racking our brains about how are we going to accomplish this. And then I was a couple of months deep in the podcast, and then the mastermind group that I was in, GoBundance, reached out, and they were like, hey, we got a bunch of people that have been joining, GoBundance from your podcast. Would you like to be an affiliate? I was like, heck yeah. And I started talking about the mindset coach, right, on the podcast. And then he was like, yo, I'm getting a lot of clients from your podcast. You want to be an affiliate? And I was like, heck yeah. And so I was making like 10 to 15% on these transactions. These were high ticket items, like $10,000, $15,000. And so going into January of 2022, I was making, 20, 30,000 in my W-2. And then I was also making an additional now off of affiliates in the real estate, like an additional like 20, 30,000. I was like, holy crap, like this came out of nowhere. And I was like, this is exactly what I was looking for. So I started talking about it more on the podcast. I was like, check out this mastermind group, like check this out, like click my link. I'll do a call with you if you want. And we just mashed the gas on it. And then through the next couple of months, I was able to save 6 months of living expenses. So I saved up like $60,000, $70,000. That was directly for travel as my kind of emergency fund. And we were able to dive in, man. So January, February, March, I wanted to make sure that the revenue was still there. Come March, it still was. So I said, all right, screw it, I'm out. And March 17th, I quit. So now I've been out a little bit over a year. That's pretty wild. What's one of the coolest places that you went to when you were traveling? Definitely Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I would say, man, there's so many cool places. Mykonos would probably be the most special for me because that was like my made it moment. There was two really big made it moments. One was in Mykonos when I landed for the first time, and I was just like standing in the suite that I had envisioned and had on my vision board printed out at CVS in a giant frame in my office. I had it on the lock screen of my phone, and I was standing there and I had fulfilled my vision, right? I woke up that morning, I saw the sunrise over the ocean. I had that infinity pool suite where it was like in a cave and you had this infinity pool in the back and you just see all of Mykonos. And I was just like, dude, I made this out of nowhere. Like, I was like, my fundamental life views completely changed after that, because I said, if I could pull this off, I could pull off anything. Anyone can pull off anything. We can do this. So that was a huge moment. So I'd say that. And in late December for like Christmas and New Year's, I was in Singapore, and I had a huge bucket list goal of going to the Marina Bay Sands, which if anyone's seen the movie Crazy Rich Asians, it's like the giant world famous hotel. It's got 57 stories high, and they've got this giant infinity pool that's world famous. And I was up in the infinity pool, and it was just one of the first night I got there, and it's 24 hours to fly to Singapore. And I landed, and I went straight to the pool, and it was one of those rare moments in life where you fully are present and appreciate the moment for exactly what it is. And that's very rare. There's this quote that's like, I wish I could remember, I wish I could realize that I was in the good old days before they disappeared. And you're looking back, like that was a moment where I was just like, holy crap, like this is everything I wanted it to be. So business is very difficult. All this game is very difficult. Entrepreneurship is difficult, but moments like that make it worth it. How are you financing living on the road for that long? Well, I had the real estate, so that was $4,000 per month, and then I was making anywhere from $6,000 to $15,000 a month from affiliates. So a bad month, I would be at $10,000. A decent month, I'd be up kind of around like 14 or 15, and so I was able to travel with me and my girlfriend at the time for about $8,000 a month. So it doesn't take as much as people think. And we were pretty bougie about it too. Like we were wining and dining, Mykonos, Santorini, Crete for a month. Lived in Barcelona for a month. So we were wheeling, like we're not cheap, and it was still about $8,000 a month. So I was still saving a bit of money. And then come Brazil, which was like September, October. Yeah, it was like September, October. That's when I created my new business. And then now that and my podcast and my real estate is what I live off of full time. So the new business was, I was like, let me build, like, it originally started as a course. So when I was traveling, I was like, what the hell am I going to do next? Like, who am I? Like, this is everything I've ever wanted. Now what? And I couldn't think of anything to work towards or work on. And so there's a lot of people that listen to the show that, you know, they're like, one day I'm going to quit my job and travel the world, financial freedom, woo. But after a month of laying on the beach, you're just hungover and sunburnt. All right, I've done it. I've done the thing that you're trying to do. The reality of the situation is you need something to work on and work towards. That's where happiness and purpose and fulfillment come from. So I was kind of meandering throughout the travels, and I started getting really sick with the idea of like, who am I? What am I trying to accomplish? What's the next business that I'm going to build? And so I was like, I'm going to make a course that helps other corporate workers leave their job and transition into entrepreneurship, because I did this by myself. And if you do it together and you had like guidance, it would be faster. And so I built like a 12-week course. I had product market fit because a bunch of people started buying it for the podcast for like $1,500. And then we got like 40, 50 people buy the course. And I made like a little Facebook group on the side, and they all started doing deals together in the Facebook group. I was like, holy crap, like this is the wrong business I'm in. I was like, I don't need to be in the course business. I'm in the mastermind business. I was like, this isn't a course with an attached Facebook. This is a mastermind with an attached course. And so I quickly pivoted, and now we have 130 members, and it's been freaking awesome, man. The entire group revolves around helping people transition from corporate into cash flow, which is to be able to replace your salary and help you transition into entrepreneurship. And it's a freaking blast, man. It's that really rare intersection between achievement and fulfillment where it creates cash flow. It's super fun, but it's also the most fulfilling thing I've ever done.
Wow, that's awesome, man. I wanted to read some, and just for our listeners, Brian and I are a little bit closer than I am with most of our guests, so I get some of his personal life and a few other things from behind the scenes. But you posted you posted this not too long ago. You said, I guess this is just your earmark from corporate America, but you posted this resignation letter, partner resignation. Said, I, Brian Lubin, without coercion, undue influence, threat, or intimidation, voluntarily resign my employment with blank. My last day of employment was 3/30/2022. Signed, Brian Lubin, 3/31/22. Why did you make that?
I had to. They forced me.
Your company forced you. Oh, I was thinking this was like Brian Lubin. Like, I'm making sure that like there's no turning back. Like, this is done.
Well, life happens for us, not to us, right? So in the moment, I was super pissed off about it. I was like, what the heck, dude? So I was like a figurehead in my region. So it was a big deal for me to quit. I was slaughtered for everything, right? People that are in corporate America that are listening to this, like, they realize how insane that is. Like, you are on the trajectory that you're in, right? And so I went on a Wednesday, and I just had that moment. It was the 17th, actually, that I actually quit. And then afterwards, he emailed me and called me, my manager at the time, who I never had a problem with. Like, my job was a perfectly fine job. It just wasn't for me anymore. And so he called me, and he was like, hey, he's like, so we need to like clear the air that I didn't fire you so that you won't receive payouts or benefits or, you know, like leave and stuff. He goes, so I need like an actual voluntary resignation email. It's like, if you could do me a solid. And I was like, dude, you know what? I got you. And so I sent
So this is what you created. I love it.
So I sent that 2 weeks later, and I'm glad I did, man, because it's hilarious. And my signature is like this little hodgepodge different businesses I had. I had like my property group as the signature, and then the website attached was my podcast. It was hilarious. And on my show, it was a running internal joke where I had a countdown for when I was going to quit my job publicly. But the running joke was nobody in my job would listen to my podcast. And so I was like, 3 months until I quit my job, 2 months until I quit my job. Here's how I'm going to do it. 1 month until I quit my job. And then I did it. And then I was like, this is the week.
Wow.
And I did it, man.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, let's wrap up here with a few rapid fire questions. What is the most expensive pair of shoes you've purchased?
I know exactly the most expensive pair. A pair of Tacova boots, baby. Austin, Texas represent genuine ostrich. 3 payments. Those were about $500. And it's a pair of those orange ostrich boots from Tecovas. I freaking love those.
Is that what welcomed you when you moved to Austin?
I actually had those a year prior.
Okay.
They were making their moves in Atlanta, and so I was just like, man, this is destined.
I tell all my friends that come here and visit, they gotta get themselves a pair of boots because it's just part of being a Texan.
Yep.
What is the most expensive meal out that you paid for?
Oof. Yeah, that one's actually a hilarious story. The most expensive meal out I've ever paid for is $700. Because I was with a buddy that was a high roller, and he loved people to know it. So everyone knows that person. And so we go out to dinner. It was a group dinner, and we're together. And then at the end, he's like, me and Brian got it. Don't worry. And he throws down like cash. So it was like a $1,200 dinner, and he pays like half of it. He just throws it down in $100 bills, and he's like, you got the rest. I was just like standing there with my credit card, just like dumbstruck. I was like, wait, what? Like, but then everyone's just looking at me. I'm like, and he's acting like this was an agreed upon thing. And so I paid $700. I just did it. I was like, what?
Hopefully it tasted good, right?
Yeah. Don't hang out with that guy anymore. Business expense.
Yeah, no kidding. What about the most expensive car?
Most expensive car. I'm not a big car guy, big travel guy. So I'll pay a crap ton of money for Airbnbs and hotels. Most expensive car, I've got a 2018 V6 Camry XSE. That's pretty sweet, called the Stormtrooper. It's the two-tone black and white. And it's a pretty good metaphor for my life because it looks like a freaking tricked out BMW, but it's a Toyota and it's very dependable and affordable. So it was $34,000. I bought it cash.
Nice. What experience have you not had yet that you're looking forward to?
I literally have a list of them, man. I want to go in the hot air balloons in Cappadocia, Turkey. So that's reserved for whoever my next girlfriend is. If I don't think many of them will probably be listening to this show.
I was going to say, dude, you're going to have a whole slew of girls hitting you up after this.
Yeah, I want to do that. I want to do Amalfi Coast. I want to have like an Italian sports car. I want to drive it along the Amalfi Coast. I want to do see the Northern Lights in an igloo. And I want to come out of the igloo and see Northern Lights. I don't have a dog sled involved. So I don't know if I'm going to take the dog sled to the igloo or from the igloo. But that's either going to be in Alaska or Canada or Norway. I want to do that. Yeah, dude, I've got a list of about 20 to 30 new bucket list experiences because I've already knocked out all my previous ones. So
good for you.
Super fun.
What's a closely held belief that you've changed your mind on recently? My
mind immediately went to the renting and the proximity. I used to think, I would never rent again, and renting was stupid and for people that didn't understand financial freedom. But now I rent again, and it's actually been pretty pleasant. I would say a belief that I'm changing is you're not that good. Like, you're not as good as you think you are at most things. And becoming an entrepreneur has helped me expand that and force that lesson on me fast. I'm not good at operations. I'm not good at the very technical day-to-day admin stuff. So I had to learn that really, really fast in my business and hire people that were really good at that and really enjoy doing that. So I would say probably the renting thing and being in proximity to like the Miamis, the LAs, the New Yorks, the San Franciscos, the Austin, Texases, like be where the action is. And also pay attention to your strengths and realize that you're not that great at most things and delegate those out.
If you were to be a professor in college, which course would you teach?
That's a good one. I would teach personal finance / economics, because when I was in college, I had one class where it was Dr. James Burton, and he taught about, kind of like Dale Carnegie, how to win friends and influence people. It's just a random summer course I took, and it was like the art of like personal finance and personal affairs or something. I don't even remember the name of the class, but that was the first time that I was introduced to like self-development and personal finance and like savings. And he was like, you save 10%, you invest 10%. And I just remember that, I sent him an email a couple years ago. I don't know if he's still there, but I sent him an email a couple years ago and I told him that it impacted me. So that's what I would teach.
How would you rank luck, hard work, and skill?
In what context?
Your success, anyone else's success, however you define success. What are the inputs that are most important? Luck, hard work, or skill?
So there's different, so I would say there's different forms of luck, and luck is created by hard work. I think hard work precedes everything. That's where you begin, because you can't have luck or skill without the hard work. So there's this guy named Naval Ravikant that I really love. He's a very, very gifted entrepreneur and philosopher. And he essentially he's like, luck is like the intersection of opportunity and action. He goes, so people that are moving and shaking tend to kick things up in the dust that are opportunities. So it's like, if I hadn't have taken action to make the podcast and just done it, if I hadn't have taken the action to buy my first rental property and just done it, even though everyone else told me not to, if I wouldn't have taken the action, I wouldn't have gotten lucky. If I wouldn't have sent the cold emails that I did to the founders of GoBundance, and they took me under their freaking wing when I was worthless, and they trained me and coached me and mentored me, I wouldn't have anything. So people could say, hey, that was lucky. Yeah, it was. But you create your own luck. And so it all comes back to hard work. You're not going to get skill without hard work either.
Awesome. Wow, I've given so many pieces of words of advice. Appreciate that. What would be one to wrap up for somebody who's just beginning on their journey?
Figure out where you want to go and who you want to be. If you're just now starting out on your journey, it may seem like a slow thing to do and a passive thing to do, but it would be the most impactful thing that you ever do in your life, because in the context of luck, fate, whatever have you, the universe rewards those that are very clear about what they want. It's very classic Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. So if you are one of the few that has a very crystal clear idea of where you're going and who you want to become, then that destination and those people that already embody those character traits will appear in your life and be there for your journey. So sooner you can understand that to be true, and that's the most important thing out of all of this that we talked about today, the faster you'll be successful.
Awesome. And where can people find Brian? Where's Brian hanging out today?
Brian is hanging out over at the Action Academy podcast. That's where I'm hanging and chilling, man. It's my baby. So I do that 5 episodes a week. $5 to $50 million is the normal range for the guest. I'm going to have good old Jace here giving his testimony, his proclamations of wealth here. If you guys want to go check that out, I would say go there. Instagram at Brian Lubin. That's where I'm at, all social platforms. And if you are interested in hearing about the community, or you just want some freebies, I've got a free 30-page guide at w2toworldtravel.com. Bought the absolute hell out of that domain as soon as I quit my job. So that's a free 30-page guide that kind of walks through actual numbers and spreadsheets of how I was able to leave financially, with a bunch of different resources for you guys.
Awesome. That's Brian. Net worth of just over $1 million. Going to be back up there here pretty soon. Awesome. Thanks for coming to the show today.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks for listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast with Jace Mattinson. For more stories, investment opportunities, and information, check out our website, millionairesunveiled.com. See you next time when you'll hear from another everyday millionaire.